HIPcast is brought to you by Enterprise Social Record.
Today we have a board member for AHIMA, a tenured and very skilled revenue cycle professional who is moved into the space of product ownership. And I got to know Kelly a little about 1.5 years ago when we were discussing her potential run for an AHIMA board position, which she has now been elected to. And so, first of all, thank you for your service to our profession, Kelly. We appreciate that. We are going to talk about all things revenue cycle, and we will talk about what is the impact of this technology on our profession, on coders, and I'm excited to dig in. I first remember thinking when I was talking with Kelly, this is really becoming a more typical place for you to find health information professionals. And I cannot wait for you to share your journey with our listeners, just so that everyone can understand how that transition happened for you. So welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here as well to, share the message and share the journey. So thanks for having me.
So the first question that we have on here starts talking about your career has evolved from hands-on revenue cycle and healthcare data integrity roles to senior leadership and product strategy. But before I ask the question, I like the journey question. So let's just walk through that journey, and then we can talk about what the pivotal moments or decisions that influence that trajectory from the time that you found health information to today.
Yeah, how did you find health information, Kelly?
I think it's funny that you say from the time you found health information, because it's not something that you grow up knowing, I'm going to grow up and be a nurse, or I'm going to grow up and be this. Unless you know somebody in the profession, you don't even know it exists. And I was one of those people that didn't know it existed, and was working, I was a manager at a gas station, looking at getting ready to go back to school. I took my little year off between high school and college. And one of my sister's best friends was a medical coder, and she's like, you should try it. It's not hard, and there's a business school right here that teaches you. And I jumped right into it and fell absolutely in love the first time I touched an ICD-9 book. Yes, that's how long ago it was. So just really fell in love with it and ran with it. From there, I was actually hired by a very rural hospital in northern Michigan, straight off of my internship, to do data integrity / revenue integrity, which really got me from the front, middle, and back end of the revenue cycle, going through all that data. And this is before we'd really even transitioned to where the internet was a normal everyday thing. So from there, I really, because it was a small hospital, I got to wear lots of hats. And anytime a coder would go on vacation or something along those lines, they'd ask me if I'd want to sit in and fill for that person. So got to do that, and also concurrent coding, which eventually rolled into CDI. So really got my feet wet working in a very rural environment. From there, it was a contract coding company that kind of headhunted me. And that's how I got into the vendor space over the years. And then as time rolled on, with the inception of technology and moving away from paper and more electronic references and things like that, my career just naturally evolved, moving along those product lines. I started off as a subject matter expert for products, and then eventually, as tech really started looking at, we need product managers and project managers to do these types of things, that's where my skill set just kind of rolled right in as I was working with Optum and folks like that. They're like, you'd make a good product manager here. So I stopped being that coding SME and became a coding professional that develops and designs products, which has been a good time. I really, really, really enjoy it. And now with the inception of AI, it's just been that journey. It's just been hand in hand with what I do on a daily basis anyway. So it's been a lot of fun, though.
So any pivotal moments in there that pushed you out of the hospital rule space into the vendor world? You're like, other than the headhunter call, but it was like, you know what, I'm going to take this leap and I'm going to jump over into this different world. Or even to today, I'm going to jump over into a startup kind of thing, because that stresses me out. Like, I like
Not me.
stability, I like rules, I like black and white decisions. Like, that's where I thrive in. So, go into a startup, it's like, wow, that's the wild, wild west.
It is very much the wild, wild west. I'm not even going to lie about that one. It gets a little bit sometimes where you're like, do we have a policy for that? No. Do you want to write one? But it is a lot of fun. And really where my pivotal moments have been, and I'll say this with a shout out to my few mentors that are out there. I actually have a lot of mentors. I look at a lot of people, formal and informal. But I always had one of my mentors, Loretta. She always looked at me and said, if you think you can do it, you know you can do it. If you don't think you can do it, you still can do it. So go out and do it. And so I ran with it. And she was actually the one that I didn't want to leave the hospital. But there's no growth there. And she was very much like, you're a credentialed health information technologist. I went back to school at the time. She's like, you can spread your wings and fly. And so that's how I went out into the vendor space, working kind of in the coding vendor space for a long time there. And then I had another mentor that was like, you grow the most when you take chances. And that means if you see a job that interests you, apply for it. Worst thing they can say to you is no. Nobody's going to laugh at you, And nowadays, you probably won't hear anything back from them anyway if they're not interested. So that's kind of the two things that I always ran with, was kind of like, believe in yourself, have that confidence, and then take those chances. I do think it's funny because there's been times in my life where my husband has literally said, I kind of feel like applying for jobs is your hobby. When you're looking for something different, you go out there and you see where you can get the bite. And so that's really kind of how my trajectory went, and kind of what some of those pivotal moments were. I will say, though, the other thing that has always led me forward, I like being on the cutting edge of tech. So when I started work and I think most people know, I worked at Optum for many years. I don't work there anymore. When I first went to Optum, it's because I wanted to work on the code books. And that was, remember they had the coder's desk reference and all that paper based. I loved that. But I also seen the way of paper was, after 3 or 4 years of doing that, I seen paper was going away. And the next big thing coming was ICD-10 and computer assisted coding. That was my pivotal point, is I want to work in tech, and I want to work with the next big thing coming, computer assisted coding. And then you can kind of see how that led into where I'm at today, because that was the beginnings of AI and rev cycle. So now I'm just in AI in all rev cycle spaces over the course of the last 10 years. So.
It's funny, you were talking about kind of the front, middle, and back end of revenue cycle when you started, and you were using an ICD-9 book, and we still had concurrent coding. We didn't even call it revenue cycle then.
No, we didn't.
It was not rev cycle. I mean, that's what it was. That's what it is today. But it was not called that. It was just concurrent coding and querying physicians and coding and dropping bills. I mean, it was not it should have been. It's always been a handoff process where it's a consistent flow, right? But we just didn't call it that. So you were rev cycle before it was cool. That's what
rev cycle before we knew it all talked to each other.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. It's interesting. You talked about working for Optum, and then you've moved into these startup spaces, and kind of what you noticed when you were at Optum. And I just want to kind of feed off of what you said for a moment, just for our listeners, whether you're a new professional or you are a second profession HIM person, or if you're a tenured HIM person and you know that you need to change how or learn something, or if you just want to. I love that you had the structure of that large conglomerate of Optum that said it, because it's such a beast. And it taught you a lot of things. It put a lot of things in place for you, some good, some bad. But What it also helped you to understand, I think, I should ask you instead of assume, this is my experience with organizations that are large like that. It helps you know, especially when you move into the startup space, it helps you know where you can not have that overburdened bureaucratic process to innovate. Did you find that to be the case when you went from a large corporation into the startup world?
Very, very much so. In fact, that's one of the things I do like about the smaller startup space. Your innovation happens like on the spot. If you say, I think this is a good idea, chances are within the next couple days, somebody's going to run with that. When you're at the larger companies, it's very much a very strict process. You have to go through these approval gates and, do your return on investment. There's a lot more, like you said, bureaucracy to it, to just cut through that red tape to get it done, which I do think is actually kind of why the startup companies are taking AI in healthcare a lot faster, because they don't have all that red tape. They really are like 14 of us sitting around a table saying, that sounds like it might work. Let's go try.
Yeah.
Instead of having to pass it through all of those layers of authority to even get a little bit of a budget to do it. So
Yeah, that's right. And I want to, for our compliance professionals and people who might be listening to this going, oh my gosh, you cannot do it that way. Actually, that's really the way everything gets started. Everything new gets started with somebody's passion and vigor for wanting to make a better outcome or a better solution or a better product, whatever it is. And so it will become mainstream. But right now, you're kind of in that pioneer space for some of these product designs and rev cycle, which is really, really cool. And so for our professionals listening, you can make a change. It is not too late. I can tell you that all three of us that are on this particular episode, we all started in what would have been considered a traditional health information role. But health information is no longer within the confines of a manila folder with terminal digit filing, and everywhere it's generated and everywhere it's exchanged and everywhere it's reported on or analyzed, that's where we should be. So I love that you're in the spaces that you're in, Kelly. So
I
talk
just
about that
smelled
a
the
little.
file room, by the way. When you said manila
You smelled the
folder,
file
my
room. You
brain
didn't get a dust
flashed
mite.
that file room smell, like you're cracking open a new bunch of chart backs. Oh, whew, good
with
memories.
those big file cabinets around.
Oh, that's right. Roll this one in to roll that one back or whatever. Oh, it was so crazy, wasn't it? So crazy. Good times, though. Good times. We had a more control over things then, but we were also the only gatekeepers. That was pretty tragic. So, with AI and automation, kind of transforming our whole world right now, but specifically the health information landscape. What do you think, or how have you adapted your skill set? Like, what has helped you become ready for this and to be a product manager? And then what advice do you have for other listeners?
Yeah, for me, it has very much been, although I have a lot of other things going on that I have to understand and know, I got to remember that the foundation of what got me to this position is my inherent knowledge of the different coding systems and of the health information profession and how it interconnects with everything. So that's the number one thing, is don't forget what brings us to the table a lot of times is that working knowledge of those code systems and just the documentation in general, how it works all together. Some of the other things that I've really leaned into over the years, of course, product management does mean you have to have some leadership ability. You have to have some emotional intelligence, because there's a lot that goes on when you're going back and forth between a stakeholder or somebody who wants something or thinks they want something. They don't really know what they want. And then trying to explain that to a software engineer to build it. And, it's blood, sweat, and tears sometimes where, it gets pretty intense when you're trying to translate things and people don't understand or they don't agree. So that's a lot of that, management style and management skills, and then other just skill sets to be aware of and really lean into. And I do this whenever I give talks on AI. I can't express enough, like, know what the different types of AI are. the
Absolutely.
artificial intelligence. There's so many different flavors of it now, and every day there's a new one being released.
Yep.
So you really have to kind of understand what's the difference between natural language processing and machine learning. Do they work together? How do they work together? That type of stuff. Really understanding the data. I mean, at the core of artificial intelligence is data, and who's the keeper of the data?
That's
Us.
right. That's
We
right.
understand it, we know it, we can find it, we can mine it. And so that's the other piece, understanding, SQL, being able to just know rudimentary Python, just little things there that'll make your life a little easier so you don't have to go and ask somebody to pull you a report. You can pull it yourself. Um, and then I'd say probably the last thing that I've recently been diving into um, is probably the interoperability piece. So how does HL7 work? How does FHIR work? What's the difference? And when I say FHIR, for those of you out there, it's FHIR, not things are on fire, even though it feels like it sometimes. But it really understanding how those things work, what the strengths of them are, what the drawbacks of them are, and kind of where the entire industry is with them. Because FHIR is being adopted, but it's being adopted as a very small niche because regulations have said you have to have this for prior auth. So do you think anybody's really going out and doing anything above and beyond that?
Right.
Not a lot of folks do. So we fall back on HL7, which is kind of a suggestion of how you should have data flowing. It doesn't always flow exactly as suggested. So there's that. And then, of course, the normal things that we talk about all the time, the governance, the informatics, just understanding how all that works together with the data.
Yeah, that's good. If you want to know more about FHIR and HL7, go find the episode of HIPcast with Janice Reese. She talked a lot about interoperability there, and also look at AHIMA or the Gravity Project, which AHIMA is very much connected to. The Gravity Project, Kelly, you probably know more about it than I do, but it's essentially FHIR exchange for SDOH mostly. Is that right?
Yeah, it's very much leaning into the social determinants and how to actually utilize that to make better outcomes for our patients.
Yeah, and for everyone listening, it's not just FHIR it's just a structure or a standard. We've been doing structures and standards forever. It's just a different or a newer, it's really not new, but it's newer for us. It's not something that we've been exposed to significantly, but it's just a structured or a standard that you would look at just like you do your code books. So or medical terminology, right? It's not something scary. Seth, what you got to add there?
No, I was thinking it was the same thing, but I was going down the path of it's a constant learning journey that we're on, and you don't have to be an expert. It's just simply understanding the mechanics. How does the plumbing go together? You don't have to describe, you don't have to set up an entire thing. It's just what are the little bitty pieces that I can put together and realize, all right, this is how information would flow. There's somebody that makes the blinky lights blink. But I'm not that person. But I understand why the blinky lights are blinking, right? And I can understand why how the information flows through these things. And Kelly, like you said, knowing the differences between AI, the most overutilized term in the world right now because it's on everything. And I laughed because I tell the teams that I support, I'm like, stop saying it. Let's just go back to, hey, we're going to be analog. We're not talking AI. We're not talking any of this stuff because from at HIMSS it was. Everybody had AI in their booth, and it's like even food service vendors. Here's how we're using AI. It's like, oh my goodness, I just want to talk to a human at this point. but you got to know what the differences are. You have to understand, and that you can use AI to do that. Like I use Copilot and Grok and all of these different tools to summarize data, summarize big bits of information, and legislation that comes through, some studies. I enjoy reading research studies, which is an odd thing to do, but it's fascinating to throw that into something like Notebook LM and say, all right, give me a 10-minute podcast on this 3,000 page study, and AI will go do that. I can sit there and listen to a little 10-minute podcast while I ride the lawnmower around. So you got to understand what the tools are, but you don't have to be the expert. You're not the one creating the engine. You're not the one creating all this stuff. But the health information professional should have a general understanding of all of these bits and pieces and how they plug together.
You think
Absolutely.
AI is generating this podcast right now and none of us are real?
These are people. We're not in a simulation.
I don't know. No, I might have
Yeah.
and I'm not actually sitting here. No, I do love that though, Seth, because I think that's the one piece. You don't have to know it all. You just have to know where to find the information or who to go to that does know that piece of information. Because you don't need to be an expert. You just need to understand it.
Yeah, and there's so many people that will guide you. You talk about mentors. I'm a
Yep.
cruiser, so I like getting on a cruise ship. So I call them navigational buoys. I can look at navigational buoys throughout my life that helped me throughout the way. And sometimes it's just simply asking. When I first went into IT at the health system, and we were supposed to do this my EMPO was assigned a project to redo a data center in preparation for our Epic project 10,000 years ago, back when Epic was still on stone tablets and the Flintstones were running around. But I went to our CTO and I was like, I don't know how a data center works, but if I'm going to manage this entire project and rebuild, I want to at least know the basics of what is in here. It's just a big room full of refrigerators to me. But
Oh gosh, and
so
data centers have changed so much, haven't they?
we spent a week just going through and him explaining the basic processes of everything, which allowed me to then lead the project teams to completely redo that entire data center. And it was a fascinating project. And it just simply was me asking him, hey, help me understand the mechanics of this.
And that is very much a key piece to being a successful product manager, is understanding how the different things work together. You don't have to be an expert, but understanding, and a constant barrage of why. You almost act like a 5-year-old and ask why until the person sitting across the table from you is like, just stop already. Why are you asking me why? But it goes back to that. Do you know what you're asking for, or is it just an idea? And so that's another big piece right there. And a lot of people are afraid to ask questions, which I find, a little, I'm not going to say strange, but it's, that's how you learn the best. And I think people sometimes step back and they're afraid to ask questions to maybe come off as not intelligent or something. But to me, I feel like the more questions you ask, the better off you're going to be, because there's not going to be that many surprises.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. There is a fascinating study there of just the power of curiosity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just learning how things are fitting together. And I can see how product management that works, because you're having to look at what the future is while also maintaining what's currently in production. So there's a lot of questions there. But so, we've talked a little bit about your journey, or a lot of bit about your journey. And obviously we are to the benefit of the health information profession. That's why we do this. We just like sharing health information professionals across the industry. But what's one misconception about working in health information that you wish people understood, especially those that aren't in the health information field?
Yeah. We are so much more than just coders in the basement. Sorry, I had to throw that in there because we were already talking about file rooms and all that. And yes, my very first coding job was in the basement.
I sat next to the morgue in one job. That was the quietest neighbor.
Yes, the morgue actually, in one of my other roles, I had a morgue that was my neighbor. That was very, very morbid. But and it's where, we all came from now. Most of us work from home. But I do think, that's the one misconception. A lot of people pigeonholed the HI profession very much into, we're just coders. And there's so much more we do, even as a coder. So don't discredit your coders. They're where the clinical, the technical, and the administrative worlds all collide into one big Venn diagram. We're the ones sitting right there in the middle.
Yep.
So that's the one thing that I always like to put out there, is there's no just a coder or just a release of information professional. We have to understand and know so much to do what we do and do it successfully and keep ourselves out of orange jumpsuits. That's,
Yeah.
the goal of all of ours is to not go to jail for any of this. The other piece is really the way this workforce is adapting to the world in just at large. Like I said earlier, I've been around since ICD-9. I have watched us go from paper to electronic health record to ICD-10 to computer assisted coding. And the one profession that I've really seen complain the least about all of it is the HI profession. Yeah, we lost some people during the ICD-10 transition that were ready to retire anyway, but the majority of people were like, oh, this is cool. Something new, something different. Let's embrace this. And we just kind of adapted and roll with it. And I don't think a lot of people realize that we do this all the time. It's just we're constantly watching regulations and adapting how we work. And it's not just coding regs. It's, privacy, security, all these different regulations come at us and we just absorb it like, it's a Tuesday because, well, it is a Tuesday for us.
Right.
So, that's the big part about it is the adaptability and then the skill sets that we bring. I already kind of talked about that a bit. We've been exposed to so much of it already that we just need to be a little bit louder about it. That, yeah, I know that. Bring me to the table. I can help you with that. I can tell you where these things fit together because they fit together in front of me on a daily basis. So I think those are kind of the few things, the misconceptions and the things that I think more people need to know about us. But we're working on getting that word out there too,
Yeah,
So.
I appreciate that because you're right. We don't complain about it. We do it, right? When the market shifts, we shift with it. We did that with DRGs back before, not too long before I was in the field, but before I was in the field, we switched to ICD or to DRGs. We went through HIPAA in 1996. So we went through that HIPAA implementation. We went through stage 1 meaningful use, right? Stage 2, we went through the transition from ICD-9 to 10, and then from 10 to 11, we will go through in the future. We're adapting to the generation of data. This is what I tell our professionals, and non HIM professionals, if they're listening to any time I'm talking about AI, I'm talking about governance, and I'm expressing we are still generating data. So health information professionals have to still govern that data. It's still going into that legal medical record or designated record set. We're still the ones most likely going to go to court to justify that this is a complete and accurate medical record. So we have to understand how that's all created and how it gets in. Still the same data, it's just generated differently. That doesn't change our responsibility. It just changes our pathway to monitor and govern that. So I think that is exciting for us. And you're right, we don't really complain. But let me ask you a question about that. I see more, I wouldn't call them complaints, but unsettledness about AI for our professionals than I've seen about any other kind of transition that we've made. Have you noticed that? Where do you think that stems from?
I think it stems from the fact, and yes, I definitely have noticed that. And it's not just the HI professional, it's really the revenue cycle, the entire continuum. And I think a lot of that is because it's where are the repeatable processes where you don't have to have that human interaction with the patient. Naturally, you're going to look at, okay, it's these few areas that you have a lot of overhead, administrative overhead, and the same people doing what looks like to the outside people routine and repeatable processes. As we all know, though, each one of these things, I mean, even, you think about coding automation, there's very few cases that are identical, one after another that are exactly the same. So how repeatable is that process? And I think that's where it really stems from is you have a lot of higher executives thinking rev cycle is definitely the place to take it, but they aren't fully informed of the nuances that go into different areas. So when I'm out there talking about this exact thing, I tell people, yeah, our jobs are going to change. We're not going anywhere. Our jobs are changing.
Yep,
And it's
agreed.
going to do exactly what you were saying, Shannon. It's all about that data and keeping of the data and making sure that the data integrity is there. So we're not taking these AI systems off the rail. And you need experienced people to do that. Because if you just set it and then walk away, you don't know what's going into that model and what's going to come out, So to me, it's very much, I understand why the lens went to rev cycle. I also can see it over the course of the last couple of years where people are dialing that back just a little bit and thinking, maybe we rushed into it a little too fast in certain spaces.
Interesting.
Well, everybody thought computer assisted coding would destroy the coding industry, and it's not. It's a tool. But
It's a
you still
tool.
need that person that's there that can understand those nuances, those differences. And Shannon, you're right on the governance side. I mean, we at some point we may not be managing the decision making process because we're letting AI that's going to develop and have better understanding over time do that. But somebody's got to manage the data that the AI has access to, because we've seen examples in this very early. We're at the very beginning of this 40-year technology cycle with AI. We're at the very beginning. We've already seen very large models just completely go off the rails based on certain little mistakes in the data or whatnot. And so it's going to require somebody with the knowledge, again, of the mechanics and of the information governance practices to make sure that these things stay somewhat in line. So it's very important that we learn it as HI professionals. I just said H like a British person. Did you hear that? That was fun. It's like we'll start saying that we go to hospital.
Yes.
But I heard that and I was like, wow, I just said H. But HI professionals are going to be absolutely critical in the future, and they are today, and they're going to be here for a long time to keep this process going.
I think we're going to definitely roll into a little bit more, even more of an important role than we are today, because we do have that trained eye for, we know what looks good for not just in codes, but in clinical information, that I really do feel like our roles are going to evolve more and more into that data integrity piece and data governance, because of the AI stuff. As things, as you're trying to put those guardrails up, people haven't put the guardrails up high enough yet. They'll figure it out, and that's when they're going to bring in HI professionals to the table to say, okay, well, this is where we draw the line.
Mm-hmm. Will we go to ICD 11 in our careers?
Oh, yeah.
Really? All right.
We can move faster this time than we did last time.
I think we will. Yeah.
I wonder, so that's a great question, Seth. I'm so glad you brought that up. Kelly, this is something like off the rails, and we have not prepped for this or anything. But
welcome
related
to the podcast.
To ICD 11, right? Welcome to HIPcast. Welcome. When we think about ICD 11, right now we have a static file from CMS that happens to update generally once a year, can be more, but usually October 1st, we get the new ones. And that's a data set that is in all of these models that you're pinging against to get some output, right? That's part of your decision making in those models. ICD 11 is electronic. And it is, it does combinations for you, and it's not two codes. It moves it into one code. How ready do you think, are you running in your organization? Are you running an ICD-10 and ICD-11 parallel for any processes that require ICD codes?
Right now, where I'm at, no, but that's because we're using 835, 837 data. So it is strict, ICD-10 CPT coming through. However, I have in the past, and I usually do preach this in the AI space as well. Don't limit yourself to the ICD codes. Go into the SNOMED, go into RX,
Yeah, absolutely.
all of that, because those are going to stay static when we move to ICD-11. So it'll kind of give you the little bit of a launching pad, but ICD-11, to your point, very dynamic. It is going to be, I'm really excited for it, to be honest. It's going to lend itself very well to artificial intelligence, but it's going to be a long path to get there because it is electronic. So it was kind of made to do that type of work in the, I'm not going to say artificial intelligence space, but really lend itself to more of an electronic use cases, more so than ICD-10. And I've always said that about PCS, though, that PCS was made.
Oh, PCS is amazing. From a data perspective, PCS is powerful. If you're using the segments of the tables in PCS, wow.
That's
you
exactly.
can drive
and I've
so
said that my entire career. It's like, we're not going to use CPT. We're going to use PCS, and then we'll crosswalk it to CPT.
And for those that are listening that don't know those acronyms, use AI to help you learn about what PCS is and all that. Well, this has been a lot of fun, Kelly. Thank you for joining us. I've had just a blast talking to you about what's going on in the future and where we're heading as a profession.
Yeah, this has been great. Thank you guys for inviting me. Like I said, I'm thrilled to have been here and just talk about the journey and maybe inspire some other folks to get into product management with me. Come on this journey. It's fun.
It is
Absolutely.
fun. It is. And I say do it. Call her, send her a message. She'll give you some, point you in some direction for you to
Absolutely.
decide,
And
right?
you never know. Maybe I'm hiring.
There you
Maybe
go. I like it.
hiring.
All right,
Thank
Shannan,
you
until
so
next time,
much.
my friend.
See you next time, buddy.